All right, we're back on. I'm going to bring Jim and Sean on here shortly. If it's anything like the conversations that I've had with Jim and Sean in the past, it's going to be absolutely mind blowing. So I will bring them on here. Jim, Sean, what's up, guys?
Hey,
Hello. Hey, Zach.
I'm stoked to have you. I'm stoked to have both of you because we would have done a session alone for either of you. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about here. How you guys been? Give us a little update on what you've been up to recently.
Well, hey, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having us. We're glad to be here. By the way, I was just sharing the link. It's sisugrit.com. Whatever. I love that. Sisu Grit.
Sisu means grit. It's the Finnish word. The closest, it's a Finnish word, and the closest translation for Sisu is grit or determination.
So. Oh, okay. I knew it was Finnish. I didn't know that. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Actually, if you read the book Grit, Angela Duckworth, she talks about that the closest way to describe grit is this. It's like a Finnish, almost like a cultural thing, like a stoic kind of determination. So,
okay, love it.
Cool fact, huh?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us. Yeah, so you and I have talked over the years, and you know, kind of the latest is, and what I think we've been talking with you and Frank and Brian about is how Jim Gray and I, my business partner Jim, there are using Sisu now at our new company. So we were at a different brokerage, a franchise brokerage. We're now with a brokerage called eXp Realty.
Yep.
And so we made that switch to eXp Realty in February here of 2020, like right during the whole, shutdown and, what should we do with COVID and all that kind of stuff. And so now here we are kind of full circle with really leveraging, Sisu into performance for business partners all across the United States. And we just launched our nationwide challenges, which we can talk more about. And so Jim and a number of us from our former brokerage and other brokerages have been on this journey, and we're glad to have Sisu as a part of it. So thanks for having us, Jim. Anything you would add to that?
No, man. I mean, Sisu, for us anyway, is sort of that magical, ingredient that helps us. It's kind of like ground zero, right? So it helps us all decide what we're talking about. So we're always talking about the same thing, right? As it pertains to production. So, in our experience, I think you'd agree, Sean, that's always critical. We have the terms defined. We've quantified the terms, and then we can have a conversation around that. I'd like to create Sisu just for my 20-year-old daughter, because I think that would be good. Maybe our arguments would be more productive. The goal, the gap.
But we can turn that into something.
Yeah. So maybe that's the next iteration.
Well, and Zach, for anybody who's watching this live or recorded, right? So kind of the reference just for relevancy is last year, Jim and I owned the company. Jim was the director of lead generation for the company. We were the number 13 largest Keller Williams team in the world, number 31 across all brokerages. And we did about 5 million in GCI, so 5 million in gross commission income on 171 million in volume for 464 units. So that's kind of some relevancy in terms of this stuff, what we were doing. We were the first franchised real estate team in the history of the United States. And so we dealt with agents and teams again and again and again. We were also MAPS coaches at our previous brokerage. And we love our previous brokerage, by the way. Jim and I were professionally trained coaches helping real estate agents. My velvet rope was 50 million in volume or higher. Okay. So I only coached teams, and what Jim is referencing are coaching agents, coaching teams. And what we love about Sisu, you've got a goal, you've got an actual, and most people, hey, if you're on goal, great. What caused that success and how do you repeat it? Or if you're not on goal, how are you going to, as we say in the coaching business, close the gap? Like, what are you going to do to close the gap? And so it's this scoreboard architecture that Sisu has, that as a business owner or a leader of a sales, team, or even to help an agent be more self-regulated and self-managed, that's what we love about Sisu is it provides this scoreboard, right? It provides a scoreboard of how you're actually doing. And most of us could use this in other parts of our life as well. But, especially you guys are the first ones to really build a legit scoreboard in real estate. So we're loving it. So that's kind of the context for those who don't know us is we've been doing this for a long time. And we kind of have seen this again and again, what leads to success. And it's a lot of the stuff that Sisu is tracking. So thank you for that.
I think it would be valuable, and thanks for shouting us out. I think it'd be really valuable to hear from each of you. Like if I'm an agent, I get on, or if I'm a team, I get on a coaching call with either of you. What's that coaching call going to look like? Is there like a structure, or how do you structure your coaching calls? And I'd love to hear that because you're both doing calls, right? So I'd love to hear it from both of you because I'm sure it's a little different.
Yeah, Jim, you want to tackle that?
Yeah. So the thing about the even people who enter coaching, it's always about people generally speaking don't work for money, right? They work for money to fund a lifestyle, right? Or to fund whatever their vision of a perfect life is, right? And so understanding that is true, the coaching call always, it follows essentially a bit of a path, right? So we always discuss what was the goal for last week, and then what was the reality, right? And then we interrogate, was there a gap? If there is, and there generally can be, commonly, then we interrogate what happened, right? Mm-hmm. This is where a precise sort of measuring methodology becomes super important. So it's always like, all right, we said we were going to do this. Did we do it? No. Okay. What happened? Okay. So understanding that this happened to get to where we said we were going to be by this time next week. Now what needs to happen, right? So we're talking about what was the goal? What was the actual? Now what's the plan and the way forward, right? Here's what's interesting too about that. Then the next question is, do you have everything that you need to execute this plan so that next week, not only do we hit the weekly goal, but we're on target for the year-to-date goal. And then the thing I always, as a coach, try to do is, because what we're working for is the down payment on that house that you want to buy by September, by October, by February, right, Fred? And I can tell you that, and I've been in this position, right, because I've been coached and been off goal, right? I've had clients that I feel strongly about that, I've coached and are off goal, and it gets this place where you can have a loving conversation about, look, man, we've got to start deciding what's going to change. Either we've got to change your activities, or we've got to change the goal. Mm-hmm. And either of those is fine, right? But what I love about this particular conversation is the person being coached has the opportunity to take 100% responsibility for themselves, right? And technologies like Sisu and others, just having that, it's like that neutral third party that says, these are the immutable facts. Now let's have a discussion around that. So those are, I would say that's generally where the coaching call goes to. By the way, the converse is also true. If we're ahead of goal, then we can begin to readjust the goal again. Hey, maybe we've undershot, right? What if we put more pressure on this activity or this system? How far beyond goal do you think that could take us? And speculate around that, adjust the dials, and then go right back at it. So I mean, that's kind of how I do it. Sean, how do you? I know you do something similar.
Yeah, all the top coaches in the world in any industry, right? They kind of follow these basic fundamentals. So we have there's a lot of truisms around this stuff that you want to kind of lay the foundation for. Zach, I know you and Brian have really laid the groundwork on this, on a lot of like the reasons behind using a product, like Sisu. I mean, you could use any product, right? We
Totally.
had built out our own proprietary spreadsheet system for hundreds of thousands of dollars before we use Sisu. Okay. And even the improvements, by the way, that you've made on
it helped because you had numbers, right?
Well, okay. So numbers is the language of business, and we know what you track can be improved. So if I'm getting on a coaching call with somebody, and I learned this from being in Gary Keller's private mastermind for 5 years and being coached by Tony DeCello, one of the premier performance productivity coaches in real estate in the world. He was my personal coach for 3.5 years. And I'm very, very proud to have gone through that crucible. And, so here's what we know. The very first thing I'm going to get to on a coaching call is, okay, where are you at? Right? Give me your numbers. Don't tell me a story. Don't tell me what happened this week and how the dog ate your homework and the cat died and 20 other things that came up. Because as a coach, I know the number one way I'm going to serve this person, and this would be for business owners, team owners, indie brokers, whoever, or like what we're doing now across the United States. The conversation is, where are you at? Okay. And then what are you going to do to stay on goal? Or, to Jim's point, do we need to set the goal higher? Like sometimes people they need a healthy amount of tension. That healthy amount of tension is normally where growth occurs. And so as a coach, I'm always doing that. This would be the same. We really get this, Zach. This really makes a lot of sense to anybody you talk to who's ever played been coached by somebody in a sport or ever, taken piano lessons or whatever. Like we get it in all these other areas of life. I have a PowerPoint that I used on our nationwide rollout where I talk about Apple Watch, right? And closing the rings on your Apple Watch or your Fitbit or whatever. Like we totally get it in these other areas of our life that, well, yeah, of course you want to know goal versus actual and, what are my commitments to close the gap? But then when it comes to real estate, somehow it's like gravity doesn't apply. And I'm just going to wing it every day and I'm going to show up and things are going to happen. I'm pretty sure. And it just doesn't work that way. Those of us who've been in real estate know that that's la la land. That's not real world. That's HGTV world. It doesn't happen that way. So that's why we need a tool where you're going to consistently be tracking and really on a daily basis. You get in a daily habit of tracking your leading indicators because real estate is a lot like farming, right? Like you're planting the seed. There's so much time delay between your reward for the leading KPIs that you do in your business, your contacts, appointments set, stuff like that. So if you're not tracking that on the front end, one or two things is probably going to happen, right? You're either going to be, well, as we say, you're either going to feel too good or too bad about where you are, right? Yeah. Like you're gonna be like, oh, I'm sure this is all going to work out when really, you were making 5, conversations a day and you should have been making 20. Or you're going to feel way worse than you should. I mean, I've had people who are like, I have a guy right now. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm behind goal. And it's like, okay, you have 19 pending. This is just an agent on a team. There's 19 pending. Goal for the year is to sell 73 houses. Now, Jim on his own sold 57 houses his first year, right, Jim?
Right.
So he sold 57. You got a guy on the whoever's watching this. Jim sold 57 houses first year on his own in a town he hadn't lived in for decades. So it can be done. But most people there, if you don't even know where you're at, you're going to feel too good or too bad about where you are. So we want to get real to get right. And you can't get real if you're not tracking the numbers. I mean, if we went, and I'm very passionate about this, you can tell, if we went to a baseball game and there was no scoreboard and it was professional baseball,
yeah,
I'd be like, don't tell me those are professionals, because professionals keep score.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact,
professionals keep score.
on that particular point, right? So everybody who's listening in, you can do a bit of a gut check right now. You're a real estate business. Is it like a pickup game of basketball, or is it the NBA Finals? How do you keep score? Because trust me, guys playing pickup, does the score really matter? Is anything at stake, right? And the answer is no, not really. Usually it's just, a bunch of old people trying to have a good time and just, doing a little exercise. In NBA basketball, millions of dollars are on the line, hundreds of millions. So the precision with which they measure and track, right? So you get the comparison. So
yeah, and Jim,
just to show the point,
no judgment there. I mean,
Yeah.
no judgment, right? Some people only need to sell 2 or 3 houses a year in real estate, and they're good, and we get that. Most people, though, they actually have bigger dreams for themselves and their best life. Jim created it. It's called the Best Life Funding Worksheet, and it's adding up like, your living expenses, all of your obligations, and your dreams, and quantifying that and coming up with a number. We have found most people actually have a bigger financial number than what they originally thought it was.
Do you have that, Jim, or is that classified?
No, I've got it.
Yeah. Do you want to share it? I mean, is it going to take you a second to dig it up?
It'd probably take me too long to dig it up for here.
No worries.
Yeah, it's not much more than what you have. You've got all those production, that goal creator for production, and it's kind of like, okay, do I need to next year, right? Here comes 2021. By the way, we're already in 2021.
Yep.
For those who didn't know, this is a 90-day business, so we're already at January 7th. Do you need to make 100,000 or do you need to make 150,000? Mm-hmm. And most people are way off on what the actual number is. And then what happens is they don't do the activities that will get them to the real number. They do the activities that get them to a number that they just kind of guesstimated. And that's just the difference between amateurs and professionals. So in the United States today, if you want to make more than $100,000 in a profession, you have to show up like a professional. Making like 100, 200, 300,000 in real estate does not happen by accident. One of my coaches used to say, look, Sean, anybody can trip across 2 or 3 deals a year. Mm-hmm. Right? You've got your aunt who buys a house. You got somebody you met at an open house who buys a house. And then like one other person, one referral from a friend from college or whatever. And that's okay. And there's no good or bad with this, right? This is just like what you need to fund your perfect life, your best life. If you're going to play that game though, look how the people who make that kind of money, look how they show up, Zach. If you look at an attorney or a dentist or a doctor or a surgeon, somebody who's making $100,000 to $500,000 a year, they are very purposeful about how they do that. It might be that the hospital tells them you need to perform 103 heart surgeries, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, they know, and they know where they're standing, right? They know, okay, I'm at 50 heart surgeries halfway through the year. I'm doing good. So in real estate, the question is, maybe are you treating your business with the respect that that other professionals would treat their business? And so that's just where we have found, Sisu to be very helpful in that. It's in the palm of your hand. It's on your computer. You get a reminder to enter your daily activities, which I love. We used to send out a text message.
I know. I remember talking to you about that.
Just on our spreadsheet. So remember to enter your numbers in your spreadsheet when you get home, right? Yeah. And now there's like no excuse. Like that. Sometimes that's a coach's job is to call you out on your BS because nobody else will, right? Like if you have a coach or a business partner, that's part of their job is accountability. Yeah. Right. And so I'd call people and say, hey, there's no reason you can't enter your numbers into Sisu. So, we don't have to worry about that. It's not like it's hard to find the app on your phone. Do you know how to open maps on your phone? Okay, great. Then you can enter your numbers on your phone. Yeah. And most people will go, for people who own teams, this is helpful. Most people are going to go and hide where you're not willing to go as a leader or a coach for them. So if you don't call them out on conversations, or you don't call them out on appointments or goal versus actual, they won't bring it up. Yeah. Right. And so it's the conversations, it's the awareness that tracking your numbers spurs it what it boils to the surface. That's where the magic happens. And it's Brian, really,
Brian, our CEO, he actually he coaches a handful of agents because he uses Sisu to coach them to know kind of how we can improve our product, right? What he's found is when the model you're talking about, get in the call, first thing you talk about, let's get right to it. Where are you at versus what's your goal? Now you're going to have a much more productive conversation because it's very easy to get lost. You got a 30-minute coaching call, and how easy is it to burn half of that coaching call talking about how your home was 25 under appraisal, right? And now you're screwed, and oh my gosh, and it's this big emotional spiral where, next thing you know, coaching call's over and you didn't even talk numbers, or maybe you didn't even have numbers to talk about in the first place, right? So
I can tell you that, on the coaching side and, for the team leaders on the call, again, having a standardized way to measure and track your agent's business. Zach, you basically said it, but it is very common that the agents actually, you can tell when it's really working for them because they take possession of the coaching conversation. They know what their numbers are. They already know what you're going to say, right? They'll go right to the gap. That many times they'll walk in with a plan. You can tell when, as a coach or a team leader, you're gaining skill and traction with your agents when in that conversation, they do more talking than you do. And it revolves around the key metrics that you've established with them, right? And it truly is a loving act. It took me some time personally to figure this out, but it is a loving act to disallow the story. Just, what did we say? What happened? And what's your plan? And that's it. You know why? Because, Mr. Agent, I am as invested in you getting that house for your wife and your kid as you are. I care about you enough to not allow you to get off track on the story, right? So the underappraisal, the flat tire, all these things, of course they happen. And yet your dream remains this fixed object that we are both unreasonably committed to getting to, right? Yep. So it's an amazing moment where you'll see an agent walk in and go, here are my numbers, this, I'm going to do this. 10 minutes over, out you go. It's pretty awesome.
A very professional conversation, right? Yep.
Yep.
I love, there's a book, Stephen Pressfield, it's called The War of Art. And it talks about the difference between a professional and an amateur, right? And it talks about how when an amateur golfer shows up to the golf course, they probably keep their score for half of the round. By the halfway through, it's so emotionally hurting them that they stop keeping track of it. They're breaking their clubs. They're doing all this stuff. Well, a professional goes out there and it's just boom. These are the numbers. I totally laid an egg on the last hole, but it's on to the next one. And we're going to figure out how to overcome this because I have to, because this isn't something that I'm just doing because I want to do it. This is my job and I'm a professional. We're going to go out there and nail it, right? And when you are week in, week out, focused on the numbers like that, that's what you get to is a professional conversation. Let's make it happen. Not emotional, this is why it didn't happen, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, and we say bounce between care and candor, right? Yeah. As a leader or a coach. So it is good to have some care. Hey, I get it. These things are happening in your life. COVID's going on, sickness, illness, all of life is still happening. They're a whole person. And then there's candor as well. And sometimes if we're not careful, we can be guilty of this, Zach, where Diana Kokoska said this, if you're not careful, you can love somebody right out of the business. Mm-hmm. Which is, are we getting real with them in terms, because you know what? Their spouse isn't going to call them out on it. Right? Most of us, if we're the one in real estate and our spouse is doing something else, when I go and have dinner with my wife isn't going to say, okay, did you hit your goal on conversations today? No, she wants to be my wife, not my real estate coach. Right? So we've got to have this balance of care and candor, not all care. And by the way, not all candor. Those of us who are higher D's, we can unload on somebody, and that's not good either. We want to get to this, what Jim is describing, and this is kind of the culture or the environment that can happen, is a self-regulated, self-managed, self-actualized individual who, they're open to coaching, right? They're humble enough. They set their ego aside and they can say, here's my numbers. And I didn't take enough listings this month, and here's my plan on how to do that. And those calls only need to take 8 or 10 minutes. We don't need to spend 30 minutes on a call unless you want to talk about something else. We just don't need to, because they know what they need to do. And everybody's got roadblocks, right? And if I'm a coach, I'm going to always push you, say, hey, great. Your goal was 3 listings taken. You hit 3 listings taken. I think you could do 5. A coach always believes more in you than what you currently believe you're capable of. I have a great coach and mentor, Zach, a business partner. His name is Devin Doherty. Mm-hmm. And, that can go in a different direction, which is, how can you do the same amount of income in half as much time? So there's always spectrum here for effectiveness, efficiency, dollar per hour. If you show me that you took 5 listings in a month and you were working 50 hours a week, I could say, well, we could take 10 listings a month and 50 hours a week. Or what if we did 5 listings a month and we did it in only 25 hours a week? How would you do that? And this is all because we can keep score. We have a reliable way to track and measure our progress. Whatever it is, lead source. I mean, average sales price. We could just bump average sales price. Like, could we go from 300,000 to 600,000?
Or average commission percentage, which is a number that's not coached on enough, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, this might open up a can of worms here. Jim, I know you got all kinds of stuff around lead source conversion, lead source tracking. You've given talks at YLOPO that I've heard people raving about, is lead source conversion. How do you tackle that whole animal of tracking and converting lead sources?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a number of ways to think about that. So I'll give a treetop answer, and then I'll kind of take it down a little bit, right? So the first thing to remember is we all own a business, right? So my recommendation always is to treat it like a business, right? And here's the other sort of precept here, is that especially in this age of COVID and kind of what COVID will create going forward, is my experience that we as agents now are underestimating the number of leads we need to be interacting with to create the number of closes that we want to close. Okay, so those two things are very important. Now, when it comes to lead sources, I'm going to say this about lead sources. Now, I don't know, you might cancel me. I'm just getting ready to be canceled. I want to encourage you on something. I'm going to say something. All lead sources are good.
Tell me more. What do you mean by that, Jim?
What I mean to say is the effectiveness of the lead source is directly proportional to the skill of the agent. This is my long experience over literally hundreds of thousands of leads and hundreds of agents, that all lead sources can be good. What determines the quality of a lead, generally speaking, is the skill level of an agent. Here's what I mean. For every agent that tells me Zillow sucks, there's an agent that tells me Zillow is amazing. For every agent that tells me Facebook leads, they're just terrible, there's an agent that tells me they're awesome. Mm-hmm. And here's what I have observed about the differences between those two agents generally. And this is where, friends, you can do a gut check on this. The agents that love these lead sources, what I have found is they are highly practiced on their front-end scripts, their objection handlers, and the way they strategically maneuver a lead to set an appointment.
Interesting.
So they have a very, very methodologically sound approach to that lead, okay? So so if you take away nothing from that, the thing I want you to know is when you get up tomorrow morning and you've got people to call, you might want to just simply tip your head back and say to the universe, every single one of these people is home, they're happy, and they want to list with me. All right, that's number one. Number two is different lead sources ideally should be tracked separately because the follow-up requirements may be different. As an example, Facebook leads generally, right, have a longer maturation period, right? These are people that you discover them far earlier in the buying process or the selling process, which means you have a longer follow-up requirement to get them to close. Whereas generally Zillow leads, right, are going to be further at the far end of the funnel, okay? And so it may take less follow-up. But I want you to kind of mull this around, friends. A 5% conversion on an internet-generated lead is pretty good. So what that means is if 100 leads come in, you may discard 95 to get to the 5.
Mm-hmm.
Agents who are committed, professional, they stand on stages, people write folk songs about them. They're the people that are okay to hear no 95 times because they're digging for those 5 yeses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know I hope that was sort of the answer you might have been looking for.
I knew I'd get something good out of you there, Jim. I think the best salespeople have an extremely high locus of control, meaning they believe they can influence just about anything. Whether or not they actually can, they believe they can.
Yep.
And I think if you wake up with that mindset of, hey, these lead sources can be great and I'm going to make them great and I'm going to learn how to make them great, boom, that's it right there, right?
Boom.
That
Yep.
mindset is way more powerful than what lead sources are in my, next follow-up queue. So
yeah, and Zach, to that point of skill level, and this is due to the numbers tracking, so some people might find this interesting, and I'd actually like to compare notes here with a lot of your other Sisu users. We're seeing the most effective agents, probably highest skill level, also lead sources a part of that. They're getting between 30 to 40 conversations to a closing. Okay. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, a newbie agent, if you look over their first 6 months, it could be 200 or 300 conversations to a closing. Okay. So a really easy way for people to chunk this down is, let's say you're at 100 conversations to a closing and your average commission, is $7,000. Just take 7,000 into the 100 conversations, and you're basically at $70 per conversation.
that's nice.
Now, that only happens when you ring the bell on 100 conversations consistently, week after week after week, for at least 90 days.
Yeah.
And so this is the power that it can give us. It can reinvigorate you in your career, where you can say, okay, that conversation was just worth $70 or $50 or $180. And that's what we need in this business, is where we start to view those no's as a win, right? And you can do that when you track the numbers. You can see it across the team. You guys probably at Sisu have some big number that I'd really love to see, right?
Let's nerd out on it. Let's hop on a call. Show you. It'll be cool. We'll run some numbers.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, we're actually a little over time. So we're gonna move on to our next session. But I appreciate both of you hopping on. A lot of good stuff. I think team leaders, brokers can take this into their next coaching meeting, right? And make it a little more numbers based, make it a little more professional, and get more results out of it. So, thanks, guys. I'll let you go here, and let's reconnect. Jim, I got some new reports in Sisu I got to show you.
You got it. Call me up, man.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks.
Goodbye.